Alrighty. Welcome everybody to Pittsburgh Electric Propulsion GBM 6 progress review, and that's supposed to be Michael Briscoe. Welcome Michael Briscoe, but welcome Michael Briscoe. So starting off, just wanted to again call out and thank Michael Briscoe for joining us today. He's running the PEP competition for us. He's also as he just said, the educator in residence at the American Society of Naval Engineers. So he's got a ton of information that he's going to share with us today. We're really excited to have him. Just a little overview of what we're going to be talking about today. From 7 to 7:10, we're going to do a little progress report on where we're at. Then we're going to have a short open floor like we do on these off weeks, in case anybody wants to say anything. And then after that, we're going to get right into Michael Briscoe's talk in next steps in electric propulsion. Alrighty. So going over the motor and drivetrain, we have several accomplishments that we've gotten so far. The first is that we have our outboard. We got a broken outboard from a local marina that they're donating to us and letting us fix up for electric purposes. So we're excited about that. We've also decided upon an electric motor, and it gets 150 volts nominal. It's got 50 kilowatts peak, and it can run RPMs of 5,500 to 6,000. It's also water cooled, so we're pretty confident with that. The only blocker that we have that we're hoping Michael can help us out with is purchasing it through the university, but we're going to handle that more offline. And here's a little short video on our motor running. So if we can get everything working, it's got potential. And we're just, that comes into our battery configuration and our weight and things like that. Sorry. There we go. Next is the battery progress. Luke, do you want to talk about this more? Pass it off. So I'm not
of course. Speaking. Yes. So basically, currently we're trying to decide on what battery configuration we'd like to use. Our goal metrics established is we want to have a 25 kilowatt consumption, 85 amp hour rating for the cell. Make sure that our discharge rate is less than 2C, and also have a capacity of roughly 10 kilowatt hours. We're kind of narrowed down between cylindrical lithium ion cells and prismatic cells. The pros with cylindrical cells is the weight. They tend to be more reliable. The cons is the balancing process is a lot more complex because the amp hour rating per cell is a lot less, so we'd have to run a lot more of the cells in parallel, so it would be a little bit more complex to balance. And it's also more time consuming to build because we would be soldering each cell together, whereas a prismatic cell, they use bolt type connections on the top. So with the lithium ion prismatic, they're a lot easier to assemble, and balancing is easier because we'll basically just be running a bunch of them in series. That's why, it says little to no parallel configuration. And then cons is they are a little bit heavier and tend to be somewhat less reliable in the long run. So that's where we're at with the battery.
And then Hull, is there anybody that wants to speak on this, or do you guys want me to take this one? Cassandra, do you want to speak on this, or do you want me?
You got it.
All right. So we got our Hull from, as most members know, from Zodiac Milpro. It's the ERB 380. That's ready for us, and they'll be coming to Pittsburgh to do an in-person demo for us. They want to work with us to get some metrics, and they're going to help us doing some other testing, like based on our weight of our battery and outboard and things like that, to see how we can optimize that. They're also preparing us something for drop stitch. This was over a phone call and I missed writing that down, but they'll be helping us out with that. He said that it could double the weight that our boat can carry at high speeds, so that would be helpful. Additionally, they're helping us build a keel for our boat. They're being Zodiac's been great so far, and we're gonna look to keep using that partnership that we have. And they're gonna be, like I said, optimization testing for us. Some jobs to be done is we still want to continue to look into like super hydrophobic coatings that we could apply to the outside of our boat. We want to have some brainstorming sessions on other optimization techniques that we could use. And we want to identify our optimal propeller. We're thinking one with a high pitch because typical risk of high pitch is the typical risk of high pitch is reduced due to the increased torque of electric motors. So that's what we're thinking there. I see there's a chat.
It's just me. I'm just writing ideas because I'll forget about it. Keep moving forward.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
And then go ahead.
Sorry, Nick. So just to touch on some of the progress we made in the business side of things. So right now our material donations are around $10,000 to $12,000 value. We've got donations from American Society of Naval Engineers, United States Marine. We also have a bunch of other interested companies, which is great. We also recently put together a sponsorship pamphlet, which looks really good. Instagram has clipped over 100 followers. Those are our sponsorship levels below. We're on track for all our sprints right now. I know Luke reached out to Millville Marina, and you guys said that one all right, but I'll be calling some of the other marinas tomorrow, and hopefully we could see what their availability looks like regarding other outboard motors.
Yep. Alrighty. Also, an update is we're working with Swanson, and it looks like we should have some space. We'll keep you guys updated. And then this is just a quick Monday.com review. Let me pull it up. And Michael, Monday.com is the platform that we're managing our project over. Mm-hmm. So we just wanted to give you a little tour of how it looks for us, how our project management looks. All right. So we're on our third sprint. This is a hefty sprint. Honestly, I could see this getting adjusted. But in sprint 2, we started our outline of the motor design. We prepared some SolidWorks seminars for the team, finished the sponsorship pamphlet, planned some pitches, and there was also some other things that got carried up into sprint 3. So that's why that sprint looks smaller. And sprint 1 was just a research sprint for us. You can see our this is our sprint retrospectives. At the end of each 2 weeks, we talk about where we can improve. And we have a nice little overview with a llama farm of our milestones and seeing how everything's going there. So these are our battery milestones, and we're just trying to keep track of everything. So in short, that's how our milestones are going. We have our risk tracker to see how those are going, and our milestone tracker, and then we have a NAT chart. So that's how that's going. And now I'll open it up. If you have any questions, Michael, or anybody else have any questions too.
So maybe this is part of like having a conversation more than a presentation when I start sharing my screen. But yeah. How do you see? I'm glad that you moved forward with grabbing some of the pieces. How do you see like the integration steps coming together?
I'd say our mindset was to kind of, and we talked about this with Luke. We've like struggling to like put this into words, but it's kind of just like, let's get in the lab, get working, see what we have to work with, and then once we know what we have to work with, it'll be easier to make a plan about that. So we've identified like what horsepowers we wanted to get to. And also that motor that we talked about is higher than what we probably will use, but it can be rated down in horsepower. It's got like a controller, so we can adjust that to however we want to. And it allows us to continue to build for next year, because we can reuse the motor next year and still have it be if we are at a point where we want a higher horsepower, we'll have a motor ready for that.
Very cool. No, I think that's right. And I didn't mean to say like y'all aren't doing a great job. I think you're killing it. And like the next problem that you can see on the horizon is that you have people who are killing it in these sub teams and just having some ability to either have someone who helps coordinate those relationships or, you know, a small working group that can hash that out quietly. So it doesn't become, you know, it can become onerous if it feels like groups where you need to coordinate too many people at one time.
So what we've tried to do to combat that is instead of forming these sub teams, we're using these like sprints where anybody can sign up for whatever task they're interested in.
Sure.
And that way, people that are going to all the battery meetings, if they want to be really involved, they're also involved in all the motor meetings, because we realized that all of these things really do. We were trying to, like, when we were working through our milestones, we have a section of like what they're reliant upon, and everything really relies on everything. So we decided to have everybody just keep working together on whatever things that they want to work on.
Yeah, and I think it provides an opportunity for some people who may not have been in a leadership position before now to start finding some more leadership roles as you start trying to coordinate, because the complexity in connecting systems is definitely there. So there's more leadership available for the group too, and that's definitely something that we want to help you all show off.
Yeah, we're currently working on figuring out our engineering technical leadership positions, and we've started talking to some people, and we're still working on all the positions. So we were thinking that too.
That's great. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I know that you have so that I can go to 8. I'm going to keep that shorter so I get invited back. And I'm also going to say that I'm highly interruptible. So this has got to be time where you all are feeling like you're grabbing a lot of information out of it. So if you want to go deeper, if you want to, stop and take a little side detour, definitely let me know. My goal is kind of twofold in what we're going to cover in like 30 minutes. I want to make sure that you have the information for your next steps on this boat. And then you also have next steps for your career and your education. Okay. So I'm going to try to interweave those a little bit. But those are 2 lofty goals that we won't finish today. So I hope to come away with this as we didn't get deep enough into this topic, and can you come back on X day to do that? And that would be a great outcome for me, because the one thing I want to make sure that we all are on the same page about is that ASNI's here to help you, and you just need to reach out, and I will touch base occasionally just to make sure. But whatever we can do to help you, please reach out, let me know, and we'll make sure it happens. My email, let me put it in here. I have the easiest email address at navalengineers.org. I'm the only person that will respond if you email education@navalengineers.org. So you don't even have to remember my name. You can just remember as that education guy, and you can get a hold of me. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Nick, can you just let me share my screen? And what I'm going to share is just like literally, I think that worked. My screen, so I can go through 3 different decks somewhat quickly, and also kind of highlight some of the online resources that we have. So let me go to slide decks first. Is this me? That's not me. This is me. All right. So a lot about PEP because you've already been thinking through this stuff. These are some of the slides that we presented back in August. just emphasizing again, we want to make sure you're getting internships and job opportunities. We have a conference next week. I'll show you that agenda real quickly. Everything's free for undergraduates. So whatever you see that looks interesting, reach out and grab a hold of it. If you find a paywall somewhere, just email me and I'll give it to you. So what we really do is want to make sure that you're able to, get a full engineering experience and all the resources that ASNE can throw at you, we want to give to you. And so as part of that, what we want to make sure is that you're using the PEP program to push your career forward. So that, like the boat that won last year, they made a swamp engine that worked in less than 8 inches of water. And that was not a requirement of our competition, but it helped them get jobs in their communities and help them further their career path. So if there's things that you want to explore more to really push ahead engineering wise, please do so. We are going to give a lot more awards this year, where I think there's still $6,000. No, what is it going to be? It's going to be $5,000 for speed related prizes, but then there's another $6,000 in awards related to, use of testing, use of modeling and simulation, use of data, innovative power supply, things of that nature. So if you really push the engineering on your ship, if you're soldering your fuel cells together and making, a really concerted effort on some part, we want to make sure that's rewarded. So that way in your CV, you can have a little line like not only Electric Propulsion Club at Pitt, but receive most innovative propulsion system at 2022 MAC. Okay. So I want to encourage you to really focus on, whatever engineering you're going to be into, put a little flavor of that in this work. Obviously don't tick off your team, but find a way that we can reward you and give you another benefit on your CV so you get that next job and maybe, the third one down the road too. So those are the prizes that are listed in the bullet here. We're pretty open on the rules, but you were not paralyzed by that. You've already gotten ahead of where, you've made good decisions, so you're on a good path. And what that allows you to do is to really get into some testing. And so this was a slide that I was using a lot in August, just based on your update. You've got an idea. I think that this number 3 here, where you might want to start thinking about total weight, looking at some simulations on how to distribute your weight in your hull. Those could be some of your next steps, but you're well down this list. And I know that May seems really far away, but there's a lot to do and there's going to be some unforeseen challenges. So keep up this pace. Don't reward yourself with a slack week or a slack month. Just keep moving it forward. And I'm glad that you're going to have the hull nearby so that you can test it. And as I put in the chat, definitely let us know if you have some pictures or videos that we can use to really help promote that in your community, because that'll just bring more people to donate money or donate their time or do in-kind donations. Here's a quick rundown of everything that we're trying to throw at you. So we've got the PEP page. I'm going to go through that in a moment. We have the celebration page from last year. I think that you've already been through there, but it just shows like the range of things that are possible. Next week's conference is called Fleet Maintenance and Modernization. There's a big part on workforce development. And there's also components that are focused on using different systems to increase modernization. I actually didn't see an autonomy track in there, which was a little surprising. Usually there is an autonomy track, but there's definitely the use of digital twins and artificial intelligence to make these processes move more smoothly. So the last conference we have is called Mega Rust. I don't think that you are going to have Rust in your lives soon. So, not attending that one is probably all right. But if you want to get a free attendance, it's in San Diego. So I don't think you can get there, but there'll be a virtual component where you can join online. And as I put it in the chat, Andy Vasquez, he was the person that helped me down at the dock during the 2021 competition. He really likes supporting students, but he knows a ton about codings. So if you are looking for some coding help, He's going to code Ting to help, not coding. He's going to hate you if you ask him about computer stuff. But for codings, he's a guy that you might want to reach out to. He will be at that symposium. And then like we just had a webinar today, I'm going to show a little bit of that deck on autonomy. So our next webinar is on the 2nd of November. It's actually about zinc coatings, which again to deal with a rust maintenance issue, which I don't think you'll be confronted with. But there will be some more down the pipe that are a little bit more focused on what you're dealing with. If you all do need so you've already found your vendors and they're giving you tours and all that good stuff. Keep doing that. Keep letting me know how I can, celebrate that on our feed, and we'll just make sure that that's always a support for you. If you do need some kind of naval engineering resource, some schools just need like a little bit more foundational text. This $75 book isn't bad. I mean, I think it was written in 92, but luckily water hasn't changed since then. And we've kind of been in boats for a few thousand years. So a lot of this is stuff that we know well. And that's a good book, a good reference book if you need one. And I'm glad that you've already been to your marinas and things of that nature. So I think you've already been killing it on these components. So let me pull into a little bit of like the future kind of stuff, and then I'll come into some of the resources. This was a slide that we're talking about today. Fully autonomous is having an issue of trust in the maritime industry, but because there's a lot of money on a boat, and so fully trusting it to a system is going to take a little bit of time. The international regulations aren't due out till 2028. So every flag, every country kind of has to decide what they're going to do with autonomy. But this kind of, how EE is exploding into the marine world. I mean, my uncles were electricians on subs. It's not like there hasn't been electricity on these boats, but it is becoming the driving force of what happens on ships. And the idea of how to get more power to power more of these crafts. And what we're seeing in the short term is a lot of base craft with a ton of power that runs autonomous subsystems that surround the craft with manpower on it. So it kind of ends up being like a system within the fleet. That's the kind of stuff that's happening today and kind of where we're headed to in the future. If you look on like the Office of Naval Research, or if you look at DARPA, you'll see the size and class of unmanned ships that they're testing out. And they are quite large. I think the last grant or RFP was for like 50,000 ton ship to run all by itself. But that's kind of where we're heading to. And so the kinds of things that you're doing to wire and understand how to set up electrical systems that are robust enough to handle a chaotic environment like the water, there's going to be a big need for you down the road. And in the short term, a lot of this is actually happening with tugs. So there's an all-electric robotic tug in Seattle Harbor, and there's more in Europe. But this isn't going to be a career where you couldn't live in one place and need to travel everywhere. These are, there's places with development areas, and then there's going to be hubs where there's going to be ports that really specialize in doing this. And then I'm going to come back to this. Well, let me just switch screens real quick. One thing that I was thinking about with where you are is you're at this like systems engineering part. And my question earlier kind of like presaged this. The idea, each of you is working on a system, and systems engineering is about how to integrate those systems. And so when we were talking about, what it takes to have autonomy and what it takes to work with remote controlled functions in shipping, really doing some data analysis and doing systems engineering are two skills that are really at the forefront of what industry is looking for people that they'd like to hire. So just naming something sometimes helps a little bit. And so there's going to be times where each of your teams has great work, and there's going to be times when you need a systems engineering perspective to combine that work together. And so I think you're at the spot where you've made a lot of good engineering choices discreetly, and now you're going to need some people that can work on a systems level that can help you really coordinate those systems well together. down the road, I don't think you're going to have to worry about this yet. But as you were talking about like motors and having room in your motor to expand what you want to do, you might even want to start thinking about having engineered setup so that you can swap out parts pretty easily. That you can make this system have a replaceable parts foundation to it. So that way, as you can get a battery system or a new control mechanism or a prop or something like that, you have like already set up your system to have some ways to make the like a very universal endpoint that allows you to make those swap outs pretty quickly, just like a Mr. Potato Head. So I don't think that that needs to be like high on the list of priorities of what you're doing right now. But as far as like thinking about the long-term team, the more that you can, nod to that idea, the more the team can, get investment from a new group and get a new part on there and integrate it into your model pretty easily. So from a systems engineering perspective, that's definitely how we want to look at it from forward. From the testing, you already have your goal. You've looked at the functional requirements. You've already looked at your risks, and you've got some of this idea of each of the systems, the constituent system design. And so it's kind of like that second piece up in the V. The system of systems architecture is probably the only like missing link in that setup. And it's October 13th. It's not missing because you forgot it. It's just you got to do steps 1, 2, and 3 first. But looking at the intersystem integration and how to test those things, that's going to be a way that you can really tighten that design that you're doing. And you can kind of see how as you go down the left side of the V, you can test and make sure that you actually did that work on the right side of the V. And that's kind of where you are, right? Where you've got a lot of good setups and you're kind of at the bottom of the V and you're ready to start really making sure that you can validate your designs, that you can verify that the systems are communicating well, that the endpoints are giving what they should, that the beginning part of your function is pulling the data that it should, and that at the very basic level, each of the system you're verified that it is delivering what you expected. Okay. So I hope that this was again a graphic that we presented today that we were talking about during our autonomy webinar, but I thought it also worked well for the designs that you're working on. And then I want to go over a couple resources, but before I leave my deck, we have a scholarship program. Please apply. I'd like to make it so that only PEP students get scholarships this year. You don't have to worry about it now. It's due February 7th, but it's $4,000 a year. And the application isn't too robust, but it's a multi-year funding for undergraduate students. So you all are definitely high on the list of people that we'd love to see in this program. So I hope you can take advantage of that. I'll come back to questions shortly. Let's pop through some of these tabs. So we are going to be doing the race. We've decided on where it's going to be. It's in Pohick Bay. The water is going to be pretty much the same. I went through there when Hurricane Ida came up near us, but not really on top of us. And it was pretty glassy still. So you're not going to have a lot of waves to have to deal with. And I think the way you've got your hull is, kind of mitigated that from being a problem for you anyways. There are like 6 places to put in at the boat ramp. So if you need a little bit more time in the water, it's definitely something that we can accommodate this year better than last year. There are cabins in this park. There are hotels that are fairly cheap right off of 95, which is like 3 miles south of where we are right here. So there's a lot of options for you all as far as travel, and we'll keep pushing out more details about how we're going to facilitate that. We'll have places where you can put your boat that'll be safe, all that kind of stuff. So that's the one update I have since our August update. Yes, question.
Yeah. So will this year's competition be like a part of anything else, or will it be like the main thing, or will there be anything going along with it?
So it is the main thing. I am working over the rest of this fall to get a couple things attached to it. So an easier thing is there'll probably be some younger students, some high school students on hand that will be interested in looking at this as their next step. But we've already talked with some people at Carter Rock, which is a Naval research laboratory nearby. They have just stood up an electric propulsion group. So what we're going to try to do is really recruit hard from the professional engineer community. In our area, we have about 800 ASNE members are within a 2-hour drive of this location. Actually, because Tidewater's within 2-hour drive, it's probably closer to 1,100. So I'm going to try really hard to make sure that we have a decent adult presence at the event, but it will be significantly different. So as far as like making the connections with the naval engineering community, there's going to be a couple events around this. But I know that what I'd really love is to have the team at this one, and then whoever, if other people are available or want to come and walk the floor and get jobs at like an intelligent ship symposium, something like that. There'll be other shows that are open, but unfortunately, this one will be a standalone event.
Sounds good.
Yep. So I've already talked with a couple groups about standing up a little bit of marketing here. And so those groups have tended to be electric power companies. So they kind of don't care if it's all engineers or if it's families. So if there ends up being, as you start to widen your search for funding, there's definitely feel free to offer them, the exposure of an event that's going to be pretty family friendly. And if that helps you all bring in some money, you can say yes on my behalf and then ask me, and then I'll say yes also. But whatever we can do to help you do that. And then, I don't want to broaden our horizon too much right now, but if there are events in your area where you could take your boat out and get some eyes on it, if there is like an event that's like a STEM fair. It's like the Philadelphia Science Festival used to have like 80,000 people come on a Saturday and Sunday. If you hear of anything like that where you could just trailer your boat out and get some eyes on it, it does help. So ODU was able to bring their boat to the Mega Rust conference last month. And, obviously they weren't looking for rust solutions, but they made some connections with some local industry, some on the job front and some on the helping the team front. So keep an eye out for that. I'll keep an eye out for that too. But not only is this the one event where we can take your boat out to, there could be other opportunities. Let me move, I'd put your stuff over here. All right. So for the talks, I will have the recording for the autonomy webinar up in the morning. So this will move down to the previous talks. I saw that you had some notes about CFD and doing those simulations. If you run into some challenges there, let me know. I know that's kind of difficult to work with. We have some contacts at some of the companies. Also, if you put in the time on YouTube, you can teach yourself a lot of that stuff too. But if you get into a place where you're stuck, let me know. We have a few more webinars that we need to add to this list. But this is the place where we'll try to send information your way. And we have a tab here where we've been working with different companies to identify their internships that are available. The NREIP program, the Naval Research and Enterprise Internship Program, is for college students. It is paid. I forgot what they pay you, but they pay the high school students $3,500 for a 6 weeks internship. So I would imagine they're paying you more. Those are the kind of things that are worth keeping an eye out for. That NREIP internship is actually due November 1st. And that's kind of a segue. I put that information up on my LinkedIn page earlier in the week. If we're not friends on LinkedIn and you do want information like that, create a quick profile, or if you have one, just friend me. I just tend to put out job opportunities and internship programs, and then also all the ASNE kind of learning opportunities. But it's the main source where if someone sends me some kind of job that's open right now, I just thumbs up it, share it to you all. So you always will, if you're on LinkedIn, that's one way I can push more like ones and twosy jobs rather than like large internship programs. And then, well, we kind of covered the autonomy stuff. And then just the final thing. So this is the conference that's next week. The agenda, it really starts Monday. They have like some warm up stuff on Sunday, but there's like some keynotes. So like vice admiral, so, people that are in charge of, so the way an association works is, at least ours, since it's so military focused and government focused, the people that want to buy things, which are the government, get to talk first. And then the people who are trying to solve those problems, they present technical papers on the second day. So we have a lot of panels on this material readiness and actually delivering jobs on time. I think there's 13 technical tracks, but this is one of them. There ends up being keynote speakers from other rear admirals that have vested interest in there. And then you'll hear a discussion panel, which is kind of a better spot where they can actually talk, so like, I know you're busy, you don't want to sit through this for a day. This is all West Coast time. But if, from like 5 to 6:15 next Monday, they're going to be talking about how they see about modernizing, creating a reasonable fleet for the future. So like that 75 minutes is going to be like a high leverage point where you can hear multiple rear admirals and like NASCO is one of the big, it's where that ship caught on fire about 5 months ago. It's one of the big dry docks on the West Coast. So that this is a place where they can actually sit there and talk through some of the problems. And if this ends up being a field that you're interested in, it's a quick way to get up to speed on what people talk about commonly. Workforce development may be interesting to you because, you want to fill these gaps. May end up, being talking about how they want to hire you rather than what they want you to look like. And then on the second, so the virtual component will have all that stuff on there where you can hear it, you can ask questions. And then the second day is a little bit like sustaining shipyards, that will be on the virtual side. But these tons of technical papers, you won't be able to watch those presentations, but if any of them sound interesting, I get my hands on the PowerPoint decks and we can share some of that research with you, okay? So this is just another, literally cutting edge. The people submitted papers, they were juried, they decided to have some of these people present and other people were not accepted. But it kind of, augmented and mixed reality preventative maintenance library. So like talking about some of the things that's happening right now in naval engineering. So those are resources that are also available to you. And then last but not least, those decks end up looking like this. So these are things that we have from previous webinars. So we've talked about the different types of fuel cells that people can have. Let me look at the next one. I want to go through this one first. And so, yeah.
Sorry. About that, the fleet maintenance and modernization, will there be like exhibits that you can go to virtually there as well, or is it just the sessions?
No, and so that's like a lesson learned over the pandemic. Initially, like this time last year, we put a lot of hours into putting together some really interactive exhibits. And then we put in some pictures and some PDFs where people could download them and kind of just, email people with questions that they have. And there really wasn't a difference in engagement. So there's just a lot, it's a lot more toned down on that, but you can still see my computer. So if you are interested in like poaching some people to ask for money, this is a good group. Deloitte, Lockheed, Nobles, J. Moody, they probably are going to be more of a San Diego based company, but I mentioned Ship to Shore as far as like a coatings company you might want to reach out to. ACL has been at both of the last show and this show too. And you can also look at the exhibit hall through here and looking at the exhibit hall map. And it pulls up an interactive display where you can mouse over and see the names of the companies. And this could, if you feel like you've kind of exhausted the companies you know about, this is another way, and a way that I do it. I look at other people's shows and look through here, see some other companies that A, you can ask for money, and B, you can look at for jobs.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, no, great question. So when this is we're going to rerun some electric power webinars, probably the last week in January, which I know is probably a little bit too late for what you all need, but it'll end up being some courses where we deliver some significant certificates. But this was one that just talked about electric power. This is a good picture of showing like why this is such an important issue for the industry. We had the COO of Genco shipping at our last conference. So he has like 35 to 40 ships that just haul huge amounts of dry goods around the world. But they're trying to go green, and going green is, everything from talking about the fuel cells on their ships to figuring out how fast they need to go. Because if they turn it down an extra knot, they save X amount in fuel and X amount in emissions and all those kind of things. And each one of these companies is signing on to a pledge that they'll be, carbon neutral by 2050, if not sooner. So the rule that just came down that kind of pushed this along even further is that if your ship is a certain size and your engine doesn't meet certain kind of clean engine requirements, then you have to go 3/4 of what you'd like to go speed wise. And so now every company looked at that regulation. It comes into effect in 2023 from the International Maritime Organization. And they are trying to move quickly to either figure out if they can go slow and make their money, or what they need to do to get back to being able to go full bore. But all of this stuff is coming both from the technology development of what is green and green regulations requiring more use of electrical power. In addition to the technology that's being developed that isn't about propulsion, that's also necessary out on these craft. So all this is kind of like the why we're here from the shipping industry. Let me just bring it down to, so, we have a ton in our on-demand library. You can look through the titles, but we have a ton of information that's like this, where we can really get into the weeds of a battery, about talking about when it's charged and discharged, like some things about temperature and like the memory that a battery has, about how, these things tend to burn out over so many uses. You're not going to have to worry about that in your testing now, and I encourage you to do a lot of testing. But this is the kind of stuff that we really get into the weeds. This is like a 2-hour PowerPoint that we go through on electric power, okay? And then the other one that I started showing on fuel cells was talking about how there are different types of batteries out there. I don't think that this is the kind of stuff that you want to use to make your pet boat be awesome. I think this is the type of stuff that you want to make sure you know before you go into a job interview. So if this stuff ends up being the part in the program that you really take to, and you start seeing jobs that really pique your interest, this is the kind of stuff that you go and you watch, or you look at, or we talk about, so you protect your flank and more than just your program. You have a situational awareness of the industry, as well as the exact thing that you did with your hands. And all these companies want to see that you saw a project through from beginning to end, that you actually had the stick-to-itiveness, because the hardest part of engineering, honestly, it's not going to be this month, it's going to be March, when it just should work and it's not blanking working and you can't see, and it just needs that one little thing. That's the part that all the engineers, have a drink about at the end of these conferences and talk about those days. So if, when you get to those spots, you got to fight through it. And when you get to the other side, those are the most rewarding experiences. So if you need some of this content knowledge, that's the stuff, let's pick up another day. But I just kind of wanted to show what we have out there as far as fuel cells, electric power. There's other titles in the on-demand library that might also be interesting. And then, just overall, whatever you all need support on, if ASNI can provide it, please ask. If you're not sure if we can provide it, ask also. Sometimes what ends up happening is it's not me who comes and helps, but I can send either another company or another person who has some of that background, and we can connect the dots that way. So let's turn this into a conversation. What questions do you have? Any thoughts or any ideas about what we should explore further down the road?
I have a question more.
Sure.
So, this is just about our outboard setup. I was wondering, since the electric motors are typically a lot like less, they take up a lot less space, right?
Right.
Could you use like a smaller horsepower outboard that's meant for a smaller horsepowered engine, but have it be at a higher horsepower for the electric transformation still? Do you know about that?
I think let me answer the question you didn't ask, but I heard, and then let me ask you to repeat it in another way. So I thought that you were asking me about space, and I was actually going to talk about how these engines are well manufactured to be as small as possible. So everyone that's tried to rework an engine has ended up putting something on top of it to waterproof it. It looks like Frankenstein from a bad 1950s movie. So, what I'm telling teams this year is to really think about getting some 3D printing scheduled time, or, being really to do a little fiberglass or duct tape work. You don't have to have spend a ton of money to waterproof something. But if you are going to put a new engine in an old casing, chances are it's not going to fit. Chances are you're going to need to figure out how to cover that and make it waterproof. But you were asking about power. So go back through that one more time.
It's just like so let's say this is just like a hypothetical, but if we found like a 15 horsepower outboard and we were able to fit a 45 horsepower electric motor in there, would that be something that you could look at to save space and weight, or is that not safe / not possible?
I think that the issue I would worry about more is the wear and tear. That if you overpower the motor, that you might end up putting too much stress on some of those components. But what I would do is test it, like pretty sooner in the process than you normally would want to just connect those parts together to a power source and see if the thing's getting uncomfortably hot. I know we didn't talk about it a lot in July, but some of those teams were dealing with some temperature issues pretty quickly. And we definitely know in the larger boats that ends up being an issue. And then once you get hot heat, you get deformation. So if you're going to have something that's running hot while you're testing it, maybe it works well in your first 3 tests, but it's starting to warp, or it's starting to create some grooves in something that is going to weaken your motor. So I think I think it could be feasible, but there's some challenges that you want to explore pretty early in that process. It really depends on like the quality of the manufacturing and how much it's been beat up since it was, pushed off the line.
Gotcha.
I actually had a question too.
Sure.
This is more about like a weight distribution kind of thing, because obviously the battery's gonna be pretty heavy. I don't know. There's like certain teams last year. Is there like a certain way they went about testing that? Is they just like trial and error, or is it more of like a simulation testing or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they did some simulation testing, and then they did some, so they did some simulation modeling. So they didn't have it in the real world, and then they did some real world testing. But I think, if you look at a naval engineering book, the rules are pretty simple. It's low and central, right? Like, as the more weight you can have as low as possible and in the center part of the boat, the better you are. You probably are going to have a pretty significant point mass where your engine is off the back. So you're always trying to counterbalance that. And especially if you're going to put the human weight, close to the engine back there. So even though center tends to be the right answer, sometimes even closer to the bow was necessary just to create balance of the overall mass distribution. So I think that if you have some people on your team that want to look at, CAD drawing or modeling and simulation software as a future career path, this is a place that they can really add some value. But if you just want to put the thing in a pool and move things around, that's the way that they did it for a long time too. So you could do it that way as well.
All right, that makes sense then. Thank you.
Yep.
Is there a software, like a simulation software, that you most recommend? Because we were thinking ANSYS, but we had one professor tell us that it could be really difficult to complete a simulation in this time frame. They're like, maybe in 2 years you could do one. So do you have any thoughts on that? And
I would say, I guess I would say it depends on what you're comfortable with now. ANSYS has a really good learning library. I think they call it a university. But there's a lot of help that they can provide, and it's actually there's a decent chance that within the next 6 weeks we're going to have some sponsored webinars from ANSYS on this type of issue of how to do this quickly, how to use their learning resources, and also how to make the actual ANSYS diagram of your project be part of your project management tool set. That might not come to fruition, but that's what we're talking about right now. But if you're great at like Autodesk, or if you have another program that you like, you're at a point where you can make that work as well. On the website, we kind of work through some of those opportunities. Siemens is a pretty standard industry one as well. And then if you really want to start hacking at something, OpenFOAM is open source. So you can really get after it that way.
Gotcha.
There's another program that I'm forgetting, but for actually like simulations underway, people have found it was a little easier. And it starts with an H, but the name escapes me right now. So yeah, I think that's the short answer, is to use what you're most comfortable with, but also think about leaving next year's team in a good spot by creating something that your university will probably have a long-term relationship with. So if there's something that's used in a particular course, I would try to stay in the language of PIT to make sure that it's easy for everyone to work in it. Yeah. But if you get stuck in a specific program, these are the types of vendors that we have pretty good access to.
Seems like ANSYS should be the way then. The founder of ANSYS is Swanson from the Pitt Swanson.
Right.
So we'll probably stick with that if we can.
Yeah, and so I think like just looking ahead, what would be great is, you all take a little bit of time, keep moving forward. But if you meet either after I hop off or next week or down the road and say, hey, we need more information on X, Y, or Z, or, whatever, just let me know and I can hop back on here and we can discuss it.
And I just have one last thing, is that one PowerPoint about the battery performance, where was that located at?
It's in the battery performance is in the electrical power. Gotcha. Dr. Patel is like the person who's going to be delivering that again in January, and he delivered that earlier. So there might be multiple ones that look like that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so I will make this the last thing I put in your all's chat. So it looks like the undergrad, so this thing's due November 1st if you want to do this internship. But new undergrads get $7,000. And I think it's a 10-week internship. Okay, so as far as like things that you can knock out now for further in your career, applying to this one is definitely pretty high on the list. If this is your thing. There we go, chat. So my email is education@navalengineers.org. I think that Nick, you're doing a great job leading the team and coordinating all this conversation. If you all ever need to reach out to me individually, you can feel free to do that too. And I was glad to see the update. Looks like y'all are moving down the track pretty fast, which is good. Because once you get into that, testing and fixing stage, you can't have enough time there. So I think that you all are right on the right track. And if you need any help reaching out to any specific businesses or groups of businesses, let me know and I can help with that too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to let you all go so I can get to my next thing. But you all have a
Thank
great
you.
night. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
for
so much,
coming.
Michael.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey,
Go ahead,
real quick, if everyone could just turn on their camera for me,